Hey friends, thanks so much for joining us. We very much appreciate it. We have back on the line our good friend, Dr. Dave Janda from Operation Freedom. You can find all his great work at davejanda.com. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back on the show.
Well, it's great to have you. And also on the line is our buddy Rory.
Howdy.
Howdy, Rory. If you want to listen to Dave's broadcasts, Operation Freedom, which he does every Sunday, you can find those archived and listen to them at your convenience at davejanda.com. Dave, I was listening to your latest with Jack Abramoff, and you guys were talking about government corruption and the attempts to reform it. With everything we know about this government, the power and control of our formerly constitutional republic, from the lies that this government used to get us into Vietnam, resulting in the deaths of over 50,000 American citizens, Oklahoma City, 9/11 and the War on Terror, the formation of the DHS, the Military Commissions Act, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, the Pentagon War Machine, WMDs being used in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and when I say that, I'm serious. I'm talking about depleted uranium, drone strikes in Yemen, targeting American citizens with drone strikes, targeting patriot groups with the IRS, Benghazi, Fast and Furious, and now the Ukraine. I want to ask you if you think there's a case to be made that the most corrupt government on the face of planet Earth is the United States government, because it is the one government that seems hell-bent on using everything in their arsenal against everything else with these offensive wars of aggression and now the war drums in Ukraine. What are your thoughts on what we're up against with this government?
Well, I'm not trying to overstate this, Sean, and some of your listeners, our listeners are going to they're going to roll their eyes when they hear this. This comes down to evil, and I mean evil. This is a war that's been, I think, going on for at least 100 years, and probably even before that. What this war is between, it's between truly good and truly evil. You know, the American public, I think if you do a survey around the world, the American public is seen as a decent group of people, decent citizens, hardworking individuals, honest individuals. But folks around the world, and I talk to them frequently, you name it, Australia, Europe, Japan, Middle East, there's a dichotomy between how they see and what they see in the people of this country and the leadership of our country. They see our leaders, and they actually see their own leaders in the same light, and that is a light of corruption and in a light of intimidation. And I think it's become more blatant because they've become a bit more brazen. But I think you name the government, and I think it's pretty safe to say worldwide, including our own, that they're owned and operated by a criminal syndicate, and that being the criminal international banking syndicate.
I agree.
And I think we can look anywhere in the world. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're dealing with. Now, well, the bad news is people's perception is that there's nothing we can do about this, that these people are powerful and that they own the means of production, they own the militaries. I don't see it that way. You see, I think there's strength in numbers. And we have them by the billions, right? Right? See, so people look at this 1%, 99%, or really 0.1% and 99.9%, and they say, oh, yeah, 1.1%, run everything. And yeah, but here's the good news. 99.9% of us, there's billions of us. And these elite have cocooned themselves into such a small number. If billions of us can't beat several thousand of them at the most, I don't think we're giving ourselves enough credit.
Right.
You see, I think we got to look at this. We have to look at this situation differently. The reason why they focus on intimidation is because I believe, not because they're all powerful, but because they want to use intimidation and fear to paralyze the masses.
That's right.
So that they don't rise up. And you can rise up violently, but you can also, and more importantly, rise up in a nonviolent means. And let me give you an example. Look at what happened in Nevada. Was a shot fired? No. But what happened? To date, and this could change, but to date, the thugs in the Bureau of Land Management and all their little hired help that they had there and all their little snipers that were trained on the innocent citizens in the public, what happened? They ultimately backed down. And why did they back down? Sean, because of the numbers. Because no matter how much firepower they had, they realized, you know what? There are hundreds. There are thousands of them.
Yeah.
And you know what? The dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen, 5 dozen of us, we can't take them.
Right.
And that's why they retreated. And I believe that whole thing with Bundy was used as a probe to probe our society to see how much we were going to put up with and if we would back down. Just like what happened at Boston, right? You know, we take all the conspiracy theory stuff out of the Boston massacre, okay? Let's say
the Boston bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yes. Yeah. Let's say that let's just take the government's meme on this and say there were 2 crazy, Chechens who had backpacks, and these 2 brothers, and they did this. Let's just assume that. I think that's a false assumption, but let's just assume that. What ultimately was that event about? That event was about going into people's houses with warrantless intrusions and seeing if they would leave their premises, right? And then they want to, all because there's a 19-year-old kid who's been shot, who's bleeding all over the neighborhood, who they're trying to get. I mean, if that was the case, every big city, every small city in this country would be shut down, right? No, that was a probe event. And what that probe event showed is that the American public failed. They willingly walked out of their houses. They let armed intruders that had no warrants come into their houses and search them or do whatever the heck they were doing.
Yeah, but that was Now let's talk about that, though, because that was Boston. I don't think the powers that be could get away with that in Texas. And I just want to circle back real quickly and talk about your premise here that what we see out of this government is essentially evil. We just talked about this in Spiritual Warfare with Tim Brown recently. And you also mentioned fear. And I don't think you could be more correct. I mean, Hillary Clinton just recently called Edward Snowden a traitor. And that old fear card that they continue to play is not working very well anymore. And we actually see the frog jumping out of the boiling pot as it pertains to what happened with the BLM in Nevada. And what was the ripple effect of that, Dave? Well, we see Texas standing up, even Governor Perry, say what you want about him, but at least he said, we will stand up, and we will stand for private property rights in Texas. That is not a threat, it's a promise. And then we see the militia in Oklahoma rising up. So we see one man, Cliven Bundy, stand up and show strength. We see other patriots rally to his defense, Stuart Rhodes, Oath Keepers, and others. And then what is the ripple effect of that? It's a ripple effect. It's a shot, a silent shot heard round this country, and the BLM has to listen. This criminal government has to listen. And we posted a picture just the other day, a very powerful picture I found on Twitter from the teaparty.net, and it was a picture of your First Amendment without the Second Amendment and your First Amendment with the Second Amendment. And the picture was of cops pepper spraying students in California on the left side, unarmed students. And the BLM ranchers, the patriots that stood against the BLM in Nevada, who were all armed, and we know which way that went. So the Second Amendment is the most important amendment because it gives us the right to use and enforce our First Amendment. Otherwise, all 10 amendments are completely toothless. They're meaningless. And anyway, I just wanted to jump in and say that I couldn't agree with you more. This is a battle of good versus evil. And I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in spiritual warfare. They don't believe in a creator and all that, and that's fine. But this truly is a battle between good and evil. And you're right. What we saw in Boston was an ineffectual public, a public who stood down to tyranny. They bought the official story. They thought it was okay to give up their liberty and their sovereignty in exchange for some sort of safety. Well, we know that that's a false promise. Thomas Jefferson said, if you give up your safety for liberty, you will get neither safety or liberty.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you. And the interesting thing is what was the population of Boston doing? Is these people, as these armed gunmen, broke into their homes? They were clapping. They were willingly coming out and clapping for them. So and then the media jumps in, which is owned by the same syndicate, and they market it as Boston Strong.
Yeah.
Right? No, it was the Boston Surrender.
You're absolutely right.
Okay. Now, so
it's always the opposite with this Mockingbird media. Always the opposite, you know?
Sure.
And same with this criminal government. It's the Patriot Act. No, it's the Anti-Patriot Act.
That's exactly right. So they probed what the urban population would do, right? When armed federal authorities came into the picture. So now they wanted to probe what was going to happen in the rural areas, right? And that's what Nevada was all about. Okay. And what they learned was, we got ourselves a problem. And in fact, now we've stirred the hornet's nest because what we did is we kind of went a bridge too far with this Nevada thing, because now even the people in the urban environments and in the suburbs are going, yeah, Bundy. So now what they have to do is they now have to try to diffuse the situation in Nevada that they couldn't do with their snipers, so they sent in their journalistic snipers with the New York Times, right? And what they did is Bundy's a rancher. He's not a politician. Thank God, he's not a public speaker per se. As he doesn't do that for a profession like Rush Limbaugh or someone of that nature.
I know what you're driving at here. They edited him out of context.
Right.
And we just posted this from PatDollar.com too. Hoax exposed, full clip of Cliven Bundy's non-racist, pro-black, pro-Mexican, anti-government remarks versus CIA Mockingbird New York Times deceptive edited version. These people are whores. When we say Mockingbird media prostitutes, as Gerald Celente likes to say, it's true. They're truly whores for the New World Order, Dave.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sean and Rory. I and I have personal experience with that, right? I can tell you, as we've mentioned in our previous interview, I've done a lot of work in prevention as a means of cutting healthcare costs. And over the last 25 years, I've been given the opportunity to be on many network shows. The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS Network News at the time with Dan Rather, with Tom Brokaw, with Garrett Gutley, HBO with Brian Gumbel on Real Sports, to PBS, CNN, across the board. And there's one thing I've seen, and I know this sounds very conspiratorial, but when I first got involved with the media 25 years ago, and they come and ask me about prevention, they really gave me free license to talk about stuff, against big insurance companies, against the big pharmaceutical industry, against big government, okay, about empowering people through the use of prevention and free market healthcare reforms and the like. They would let me go, and they wouldn't edit it. But as the years went on, I found that they were starting to edit more of the things I was saying. And I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show when I co-hosted a show with her in June of 2001. The last network TV show I did was September 4th, 2001 on Fox and Friends. From September 11th, 2001, I have noticed a change in the media. For 20-some years before that, been interactive with and would send them information and they'd go with it. Would say, yeah, Dave, we believe what you're saying and what you're sending us, but we can't go there now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when the Obamacare thing started to come out, and I was one of the first people to identify that half of Obamacare was hidden in the stimulus bill in February 2009, which is something we talked about in our last interview, I contacted many of the contacts I had had for many years in the mainstream media. Many. Knowing full well that they probably wouldn't do anything based on the recent interactions I had had with them over the previous several years. And they said, Dave, we don't doubt anything you're saying. We know you have the evidence. You've emailed it to us. You have the documents, but we can't go there.
Right. Well,
and the media, as you say, are owned and operated by the criminal syndicate, and they're used to suppress the population. They're used to disinform the population, and they're there to divert people's attention from the axis that the syndicate is working. And it's not the right-left axis. That's a false, fake, faux axis to essentially divide and conquer the population to keep them entertained. The axis they work is the up and down axis, freedom versus oppression. The syndicate's goal is to strip people of their freedom and oppress them as much as they can. And that's how they create their new world order and their one world government.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Rory, get ready with your Woodrow Wilson quote. Rory's been working on a new article for his site, Daily Coin, and I want you to read that quote in a second, Rory. But, when I say that these people are prostitutes, when I say that they're whores for the New World Order, just to back you up, Dave, it's quantifiable, right? I mean, we know that Brian Williams over at NBC is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Well, who is the Council on Foreign Relations set up by, and who does it serve? It was set up by Rockefeller, and it serves the New World Order. It's truly the marching orders. Hillary Clinton has spoken there and said, I'm so glad that I'm now close to the CFR and I can just, walk down 2 blocks to get my marching orders. Aaron Burnett over at CNN is a CFR member. Charlie Rose over at PBS visited Bilderberg not so long ago. If there's anybody in the media who strikes me as a CIA agent, it's Diane Sawyer in her soft-spoken ways, always peddling the official story. And these people truly are the gatekeepers, and that's why the alternative media has grown and is burgeoning and is doing so well. It's flourishing because people are hungry for real news, and that's where they get it. They get it from the alternative media. They get it from InfoWars. They get it from DaveJanda.com. They get it from SGT Report. They get it from Silver Doctors. They get it from Brother John F. Anyway, yeah, you guys get the point. So, Rory, I want you to read that quote because I want to circle back now and I want to talk about the New World Order and I want to talk about what's happening in the Ukraine because we did a interview, Dave, with Helga Zepp LaRouche, our good friend Harley Schlanger, back in February. And Helga was making the point that what we're seeing happen in the Ukraine, in her words, is a hair trigger for thermonuclear war. And back in February, a lot of people said that that was overstating the case. But now what we see is literally this government pushing us towards the edge of war, right? All-out war with Russia. And I've made the point recently, Dave, that I want people to remember who destroyed their dollar. Because right now it's not Putin and it's not China. It's this government. It's Jack Lew, it's Obama, it's everybody in this government that continues to try to put Putin and China, but Putin in particular, in a box. And what is the result of that? What is the result of sanctions? What is the result of putting Putin in a box? They're going to flee the dollar. They're going to partner with China. The China's going to flee the dollar, is already fleeing the dollar, is buying gold. These evil people that control our government are going to crush our dollar, and I just want everybody to remember why it happened and how it happened, because it's happening right before our eyes. So before I get to my question for you about Putin and Ukraine, Rory, can you read your Woodrow Wilson quote, please?
Yes, and this was back in the 1930s, and here we go. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the U.S. in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. President Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, and Rory, we talked about that quote before we started the call here with Dave.
Yes.
And Dave, my take on that is that Woodrow Wilson was, and now of course Woodrow Wilson partnered with these people, and under his watch, the formation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 occurred. So maybe he was feeling a lot of regret about that. I don't know. I doubt it. But I think what he was talking about there was the Illuminati. He was talking about the Rothschild power, the banking power, which you've referred to. We know now that all wars are banker wars, thanks to Mike Rivero and other truth tellers who've documented that all wars are literally banker wars, including this latest foray into the Ukraine. And my question for you, Dave, is Putin in on this? Is he a willing pawn playing his role, or has he truly betrayed the New World Order, as is the recent charge by top U.S. diplomat Christopher R. Hill, who says Russia has betrayed the New World Order, and that was reported on by Paul Joseph Watson over at InfoWars. What is your take on the Ukraine situation, and is Putin a willing pawn, or has he truly broken away?
Well, it's a great question. It's a very complicated question, and there's a couple different actual answers, and it's almost like a multiple choice answer here. I look at how we're handling the Ukraine situation, and it's as though we're trying to create a war, as you mentioned. Okay, it's as though we're playing. We're not even. My dad used to say, if your opponent is playing chess, never play checkers. Okay, well, Putin appears to be playing chess, and we're not even playing bingo. Okay, it's such a horrible mismatch, and if you look at the steps we're taking about this sanction situation, and it's almost as though, as you say, we're goading him into a world war. So I go back to a conversation that Barack Obama had with Medvedev. I think he was president at the time or prime minister at the time.
Yeah, I recall
they didn't,
this. Yep.
Right? They didn't know that the microphone was on. I think this was in 2011.
Yep.
And Obama leans forward and he says to Medvedev, now I got one more election coming up. You got to give me some space here. You got to give me some time. And
he said something like, "I'll have much more flexibility once I win the election."
Correct.
Right.
And he said, and Medvedev said, "I'll take that back to Vladimir."
You're right.
Okay. Now I believe I am not a Putin fan. Okay. So you're not going to call me a sympathizer with communism or with Vladimir Putin. On the other hand, he is kicking the living bejeebies out of Obama, the State Department, our intelligence agencies, and you name it. Okay? And that's my assessment anyway. Vladimir Putin's goals, I think, are many. One of which is reestablishment of the Russian Soviet Empire, because I know he wrote a dissertation about that the single greatest mistake Russia has made in its history was allowing the dissolution of the Soviet Empire. I think that's part of it. But the other part, as a KGB guy, he despises the United States and he wants to blow apart the US dollar. He wants it to lose its reserve currency because he knows he doesn't even have to fire a shot. He knows if he takes down the dollar, he implodes the United States from within and from without. So all this concentration about troops on the border, that's all, I think, kabuki theater. I think this is it's a financial war, it's a currency war, as Jim Rickards has talked about. And I think 99% of the population is unaware of it. And I think we're in the process of not only losing that war, but really going down the tubes. Now, that being said, if we take that Vladimir Putin is trying to destroy the United States dollar, its reserve currency, and our financial system, and thereby take down our country, I also believe the people that are also our opponents, also the criminal international banking syndicate, the New World Order crowd, America and its sovereignty and its financial system is the speed bump for them to create their new world order. Their goals are similar. Their goals are to take down our financial system, okay? Because if they can take down our financial system and take down the dollar, they can introduce their one world currency, their one world government, right? Their neo-feudalism system, which is what they want to set up.
That's right. Well, explain that. Just flesh that out real quickly. Neo-feudalism, they want to turn us literally into serfs. And when Bill Gates gets up at a TED conference and he talks about zero carbon emissions over the next 30 to 40 years should be the goal. Zero carbon emissions without other new technologies to replace those energy sources, that means serfdom. That means 16th century living standards for the average human being on this planet, Dave. So when you talk about neo-feudalism, you're not just whistling Dixie. I mean, it is absolute slavery and serfdom. That's what they want to implement on this planet.
Their goal is to wipe out the middle class. The middle class is what they have to get rid of, right? Because the middle class is what blocks them from their new world order. Mm-hmm. So they need to get as many people into the lower class, fewer people into the upper class, and annihilate the middle class. That's what their goal is. So how do they do that, right? So they create wars, right? Because it's not the rich guys that are sending their kids to go fight the battles, right? It's the middle class and the lower class. So understand their goal, part of the New World Order's goal, I truly believe this, it's in their playbook, Agenda 21, and the supplement to Agenda 21, is a 90% population reduction, okay? How do they do that? Well, there's a lot of ways they do that, but one really quick way to do that where you can wipe out a whole lot of the useless eaters, as they like to call us, is you start an unprovoked war.
That's right? Yeah.
Okay.
In addition to their vaccine programs, in addition to the Ebola, which is now on the loose again, in addition to the GMOs in the food, in addition to the fluoride in the water, you're right. They have remarkable programs that they've rolled out over many, many years. And if you guys want to look at the source of these, please feel free to look into the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. Take a look at some of these big organizations that have helped push these agendas on you and your family. All right, sorry to interrupt.
Well, and you mentioned Bill Gates before. In that same TED conference where he talked about zero carbon emissions, he goes on, and I'm going to actually play this on tomorrow's show. It's funny you brought it up. He talked about, what we need to do, and he has his formula. He shows up on this PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. He goes, the key thing is to get to zero carbon emissions. He directly says this, Sean and Rory. We have to reduce the population of the world. Mm-hmm. And he goes on, and he goes, the way we do that is with vaccinations, reproductive techniques, and healthcare.
Yep. That one has stuck with me because he is, a lot of people look to him as some sort of hero and a man who's doing great things with all his billions of dollars. And you're right, he actually said if we do a really good job, the result will be depopulation.
Just look at his vaccination program.
In his words, if we do a really good job.
He says it. It's his direct words, Sean. That's not anybody making anything up. And if you look at his vaccination programs through the Gates Foundation, they launched on this vaccination program. I have some friends in India, medical providers. They launched this, we're going to eradicate polio in India with our vaccination program through the Gates Foundation. Okay, you know what they did? They ended up creating a situation where there's 35 times more problems with neurologic disorders because of their vaccinations that are far worse than polio.
Yep.
Okay? Oh, so wait a minute. So he's got, okay. The second thing is his reproductive issues. He's been working on these techniques to essentially sterilize the world with immunization issues, with some of his, he's talking about ultrasounds on men's private parts in third world countries to reduce population growth. I mean, his foundation supports that. And by the way, and as far as healthcare, Kathleen Sebelius, thank God it's finally gone, right? Mm-hmm. From Obamacare, from Director of Health and Human Services. Who was named the person to take her place?
Somebody who was involved directly with Bill Gates and his vaccination programs.
She would be the former CEO of the Gates Foundation that was in charge of the vaccination and reproductive health portion of his program.
Yeah, welcome to the New World Order, folks. I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is serious business, Dave.
Yeah, because and it's not conspiracy theory, Sean.
No, I know.
But it's conspiracy. No, it's fact. It's conspiracy reality.
What's crazy is that when people talk about the New World Order, it sounds like some sort of, it sounds like a ridiculous label, but that's not us that came up with that, Dave. That's Bush Sr. talking about it more than 200 times when he was president. Okay? That's the recent claim by the top U.S. diplomat saying that Putin has betrayed the New World Order. I mean, it's not you and I making up that term. This is what it is, guys, and this is what they are doing. This is their goals, their stated goals. Decrease the human population and take control with a one world government.
So here's the thing. You asked me about the Ukraine, and that's where we're going, and you bring up Putin again. So I think Putin's goal is to destroy the United States, and he believes he can do that without firing a shot. And he believes the way he can do that is bringing down our financial system. Okay, so he's cutting all these deals with China and with India. He's going to sign a gas deal with China that's going to be huge in a week or so, as I understand it.
But may I just say one thing, Dave? I just want to remind everybody that it's this government, it's our government that's being the aggressor. It's NATO that's being the aggressor. Right. And so this posture that he has to take against these sanctions in selling off all the dollar holdings and treasuries and everything else and making deals with China to get away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency is a direct result of the aggression coming out of our government. So again, when I say, remember who killed the dollar, again, it's not Putin.
They're going to use him as the excuse, and he's a willing accomplice. That's what I believe.
Okay.
You see, I believe he knows that the New World Order crowd, and he's saying, you know what, you can take your New World Order and you can do whatever the hell you want, because ultimately our goals are the same. My goal as Putin is to reestablish Russia. My goal is to dethrone the U.S. dollar, and my goal is to destroy the United States. And you, New World Order, your goal is essentially the same, only you can run your thing, but we're not going to be a part of it. So you know what? If I can help you do your goal and you can help me do my goal, guess what? Deal. That's where the conversation with Obama and Medved happened. See, when Obama said, give me some space, give me some time, I can be more flexible after the election. he could be more flexible about bringing down the system after the election.
Right.
What's China's role, and why are they being so quiet at this point?
Well, I don't know if they're being so quiet, Rory. I think China is in cahoots with Russia. I do think that they are also working in conjunction with the New World Order, because their goal is also to blow apart the United States, to remove the dollar as the reserve currency. That's why we're seeing all this gold flooding into China, right? They're the ones buying it because they know when the whole thing blows up, what did they used to say? Whoever holds the gold or whoever holds the silver holds all the power. Well, and the question is, why would the West send all their gold and all their silver to China? Because here's why: they own all our debt. And the Chinese play hardball. Okay, my dad always used to say, he was a really smart business guy. He used to say, "You follow the Chinese. You watch what they do, and if you watch what they do, you will find the tickets to success." Okay, so here's what happens: China buys all of our debt. They have us over a barrel, and they call us and they go, "So here's the deal: we have these trillions of dollars worth of debt, your bonds. We can dump those on the market tomorrow. We can blow up your country tomorrow. So here's what you're going to do." What you're going to do is you United States government, through your Federal Reserve, through your Treasury Department, through all your exchange stabilization funds and President's Working Group and all that crap, what you're going to do is you're going to suppress the price of gold and silver. We're going to buy that gold and silver. We're going to move it over to here. Because if you don't, we're going to dump all our bonds on your market tomorrow. And that's what's happening.
Well, where's the gold coming from?
It's coming out of our Federal Reserve System. I believe there's a reason why, Rory and Sean, when the Germans asked for their 187 tons of gold back, we could only supply them with 5 tons. Mm-hmm. I believe it's because it's not where it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that through Koos Jensen's great work over at In Gold We Trust, he's drawn a diagram out of the London bullion market, out of the LBMA, through Switzerland and into China. I mean, there's a direct correlation to the numbers. And we know that China has hated all of the Western world, in particular the United Kingdom, since the Opium Wars, and I don't think that they've forgotten any of that. And I believe that what you were saying as far as us sanctioning them purchasing all the gold, I think that that's spot on. But is Russia and China going to form their own new world order, or where do they go from here?
Yeah, I think they're forming a relationship between the two of them, and I think they're going to also include a lot of the other BRIC countries, Brazil, India. I mean, they're already cutting deals with India. They're already cutting individual deals with Brazil. They're already using the Chinese yuan or renminbi, whatever you want to call it, their currency, the Chinese currency, as a means of trade. I think that's what's in the process of happening.
This new Eurasian Economic Union that just was announced a couple of days ago, as far as between Belarus, Kazakhstan, one other country, and Russia, and they are going to trade in gold. And that's what that was an article that was just published, like I said, just within the last couple of days, either Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, so Russia is already making major moves towards using gold as currency.
Right, that's exactly it, Rory. And they're also setting up an IMF equivalent. A recent article, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, have made significant progress in setting up structures that would serve as an alternative to the IMF and the World Bank. I mean, this is all going on. The mainstream media does not report on it. They don't report on it because the syndicate doesn't want them to report on it. The goal is to take down the system. I think their goal and objective, whether it's the New World Order crowd, the criminal banking crowd, or whether it's Russia or China, they're both utilizing each other for a similar end result. And China and Russia, I believe, think that they can stay. That when the system collapses, you know what? Whatever happens to the West, whatever, knock yourselves out. You guys are, but we're going to have our own. We're going to be separate and distinct from that crew. We're going to own so much gold and silver and minerals and resources that guess what? We can combat anything down the line.
It makes me wonder if maybe Putin and the powers in China really have broken away from the New World Order when all of this is being set up, and then the mainstream Mockingbird media won't report on it because the powers that be that control this country don't want them to report on it. Maybe there has been a breakaway, from the New World Order plans. I mean, we can certainly hope for that because, one thing is for sure, whether we like it or not, whether the New World Order achieves its goals or not, Dave, this dollar paradigm, this war debt, dollar-based world reserve currency paradigm is coming to a fast end. And I keep saying it's happening right before our eyes. We've been talking about the collapse for a very long time. Well, this is what it looks like, guys. This is what it looks like. International monetary financial warfare and saber rattling for more wars out of our own government, more unnecessary, unconstitutional wars. That is what this looks like. Death of empire looks like exactly what we're seeing.
Well, and that's exactly it. And that's the key for every one of our listeners. That's the key right now, Sean, is that just like, we just saw that Korean ferry turn over, right? So it was reported that as the ferry was in the process of sinking and then flipping over, the crew was telling the passengers to put on their life preservers, but stay in the boat.
Yep.
Okay, so let's draw an analogy here with the United States. The system is collapsing around us. Anybody who has any kind of idea of what's really going on in the world realizes the world system's collapsing and the petrodollar and the dollar is collapsing. Yet our government leaders, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, the Mockingbird media are all saying, put on your life preservers, buy some more stock to protect yourself in the stock market, but stay in the boat. Mm-hmm. Everyone who stayed in that Korean boat died. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. And that's where every one of our listeners needs a huge heads up here. They need to take the appropriate measures to protect themselves and their families and let their members of their families know that this is coming and what they need to protect themselves. And it comes down to financially, I believe you protect yourself with gold and silver. It's the only real money out there. I think you protect yourself with the foodstuffs for a good couple months. I'm not saying you have to stockpile it for a couple years, but I do think there are going to be supply chain disruptions when this all breaks down. I think you need to own some lead and have something that can shoot that lead to protect your family and yourself. And I think you need to let as many people as you know and care about know that this is coming. And I can assure you, when you do that, your own family members might even look at it and you go, I think they've gone over the edge. I think they're crazy. I think they're beyond conspiratorial. Look, at the worst case scenario, you got insurance with gold and silver. You got insurance with some food in case there's a tornado or something. And in worst case scenario, you got some protection, right?
Yeah.
But people need to do that, and all too often people are watching this manipulated gold market, and let's face it, the powers that be, our own federal government, the Treasury Department, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the President's Working Group, they're all suppressing the price of gold and silver. A lot of people get wigged out about that. No, they're giving you an opportunity to buy insurance cheap.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say, as it pertains to the label of conspiracy theorist, in the charge that anybody that would question this system is a tinfoil hat nut or a conspiracy theorist, that label is wearing so thin, Dave, because we just saw a poll in which young people voted Edward Snowden as a hero and somebody that they would like to emulate. And meanwhile, you have Hillary Clinton calling Edward Snowden a traitor just very recently. And Hillary Clinton, there's no better example of somebody that has willingly served this New World Order with quite a high body count, I might add, associated with her and her husband. And it's just wearing very thin. As the world wakes up, we see it all over this country. Domestically, we see a tremendous wake up and a sea change happening as so many people wake up. And we're seeing it in Texas, Oklahoma, Nevada. We're seeing it all over middle America, and that is the good news. I always like to shine a little light and leave some good news for people. The awakening is real, and it scares the hell out of the New World Order tribe because it exposes them as they get more and more desperate and push harder and harder and harder to roll out their tyranny. And people are resisting it. And thank God we still have a Second Amendment, Dave.
I agree with you, Sean. And here's the good news, is that here's where the New World Order crowd doesn't get the American population and where Putin and the Chinese don't get the American population. Is when all this busts apart, what I think happens is the New World world order ultimately loses and the American public comes back to the forefront and takes control of their system. You see, I think what China and Russia think is that when all it blows apart, that everybody's going to be so petrified and so paralyzed that our country is going to just implode. And I think what's going to happen is now some of the American public that are zombies and are owned and operated by the government syndicate and have never had to do anything in their lives because they've been owned by the syndicate, they're going to become paralyzed, right? And they're not going to know what to do. But I do believe there are millions of Americans that are knowledgeable, have thought this thing through, and know something's wrong. Some of them might not know exactly what's wrong, but they know something's wrong. And when it hits the fan, rather than become paralyzed, what's going to happen is they're going to step forward. That's happened every time in our country. And when that happens, the New World Order will be defeated. They will have imploded the system, but they're not going to get control of the system. The system will become under control of the true American population, the American population that we're all born and bred with. And this is where Putin and the Chinese have it wrong. We're not going to, the system might implode, but we will put it back together, and we'll put it back together in a better position. And the New World Order will lose, and ultimately Russia and China might have control of the gold, they might have control of the currency system, but they won't have control over America.
Yeah. And at that point, we can have trials for those who have served this evil so willingly, and there'll be honest trials in honest courts with real juries of real peers that can try these people for their crimes. Dave, it's always such a darn pleasure to talk with you. Everybody, he's a real doctor, and his show, Operation Freedom, can be heard. Well, I think the best way to hear it is to tune into DaveJanda.com. Personally, I think that's a great way to do it. That's how I do it. Dave, why don't you tell everybody about your show?
Yeah, the show is been in existence for over 3.5 years now. We do it live every Sunday from 3 to 5 Eastern at Wham Talk 1600 Studio, and I call it our Freedom Bunker. We're located in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, a very leftist community, but actually they've actually embraced us a fair amount. It's kind of surprising. It's interesting. It's interesting that also that we got a lot of pushback initially when we started the show. Now we get very little pushback because the stuff we've been saying over the past 3.5 years has actually been coming to the forefront. So folks can go to DaveJanda.com. They can stream the show live. Or what they can do is they can, if they're busy from 3 to 5 Eastern, they can always go to the website, DaveJanda.com. I usually have the show up in podcast form by Monday morning. We break it down. I usually do 4 segments, usually have some interviews with a number of different folks. They're commercial-free podcasts, and they're welcome to download them and then network them to anyone and everyone they know. It's about empowerment of our population, and the way we empower them is just what you guys do so great at SGT, and that is you educate people, you give them the facts, and that's not something they're getting from the bought-off mainstream media. It's not something they're getting from the government bureaucrats that are bought off by the same syndicate. It's not the information our kids are getting out of the educational system right now that's also owned by the syndicate. But the bottom line is that you provide a valuable service to that. We try to as well, and the key is not only getting that information, but networking it. That's where we help as many people as we can, and I believe that's how we save our country.
Yeah, I agree. And using your First Amendment, exercising it is just, it's very rewarding. It feels good to speak out against evil. And, we interviewed Dave Janda 4 months ago, guys. You should listen to that one if you missed it. The title of that was Obamacare is an NWO bomb designed to destroy us. And boy, was Dave articulate about the problems and the evil, which is Obamacare. So check that out. You can find it on YouTube. Our guest has been Dr. Dave Janda, and of course, my buddy Rory on the line. I appreciate you both very much. Thanks for taking the time, fellas.
Well, I appreciate what both of you do. I appreciate your site. It just is, it's a site I go to every day. It's chock full of information that folks will never get from the mainstream media. It's truly, going to your site is like having an insurance policy.
That's so kind. Well, we do a lot of damage in a day against the New World Order. We post a lot of great articles from a lot of reliable sources, and you are definitely one of those. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. I appreciate all that you do.
Appreciate all you do too, my friend. And guys, thanks for all your support at sgtreport.com, and please do check us out at thelibertymill.com as well. Real news 24/7, designed to fight the New World Order and return liberty to this once wonderful country, which will be wonderful again. Thanks for watching.